Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know it did that.
Hey there, where you going? No, man, you got the right classroom. Come on in, take a seat beside me, my friend. Hey, look, here come T.A. Charlie. Let's see what he got to say.
Morning, you're watching The Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic. Homeroom is on Rumble. You just go to Rumble and search the channels for The Road to Concord. It's one word. When you find it, you go ahead and you click follow. Might mean you got to set up an account, but it's fast, it's easy, it's free. I did it. You can do it. For those technologically challenged members of the class, you can also catch us on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. Then you can catch a podcast after the show. It's uploaded to Podbean, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, and BitChute when it works. If you look for The Road to Concord, you'll find it. You can go to the blog page. That's theroadtoconcord.com. That's where you'll find all your show notes, study notes, and handouts for the class. Finally, you can email a professor at joe@theroadtoconcord.com. He's a little slow, but he'll eventually get around to emailing you back. If you find our classes helpful, please click the thumbs up, like, follow, subscribe, and share it with those you think could benefit from it. Just warn them that Joe is an acquired taste, and we mean it.
Hey, we all know T.A. Charlie isn't all there. Now, just stay seated and give it a chance. You'll soon realize we not might be the smartest, but we each independently form opinions based on reason and logic. We're free thinkers. Let's see what the Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic has on the lesson plan for today.
That's going to be a low energy show. I'm not, I'll explain, but Marianne wants to know if I'm sick. Nope, not sick. Just not having it. Hey, Tortoise has a 1 minute lag. Tortoise, refresh your screen. A lot of times I end up with that problem on Rumble. But if you refresh the screen, it's not as much of a lag. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. I don't know. Hey, look, folks, Friday, excuse me, show programming note. Last time I heard, Jimmy Zinker's still going to be with us Friday morning. So he'll be in studio with us, and we'll be talking about one of Jimmy's favorite subjects, communism. Kind of goes with scripture too, but you got to be talking about prophecy to get there. Today's show. Last week, I kind of set my Genesis study aside for a little while. We will get back to it, but I wanted to set it aside. I'm working on the book that Charlie and I want to write. I've been working on that, and he's been editing it for me. And it got me to thinking about apologetics. It's I forget what the heck. I think it's a Greek word. It might be Latin, but basically it means a defense of your beliefs, or why you believe something you believe. It doesn't mean apologizing. It means to defend. I don't want to talk about the Bible today. I don't even want to talk about Yahweh or Yeshua, Jesus and, the God of the Bible. That's not what I want to do. I want to address something else that's a little more basic. I want to address the argument for whether there is or is not a creator. And I want to address it from the logical and scientific approach. For your non-believing friends, something that they claim should influence them. Now, a lot of us, why do I want to do this? Well, a lot of people in our world today, they'll tell you, well, you can't prove God. Be careful about that. Well, he's a negative. You can't prove a negative. Be careful about that. They like to say you can't prove a negative, and logically you can't prove it deductively, but you can prove a negative inductively. What do we mean by a negative? Well, essentially something you can't hear, see, smell, taste, or touch, like an idea. How do you know an idea exists? Well, I have ideas, Joe, so I know they exist. Prove it to me. We're going to be philosophical today. I'm serious. Prove to me that you have, tell you what, I'll do you one better. Charlie, pop yourself into the screen here for a minute. I'm going to conduct a live experiment before we get going on class.
I hate to be your guinea pig.
Yeah, well, you're going to be my guinea pig. Prove to me that you're sentient.
I think, therefore I am.
No, you just proved you exist.
Oh, I guess
Prove
you're
to
right.
me that you're sentient.
What's your definition of sentient?
Well, now you've got part of the problem going on, don't you?
I'm getting smarter.
It won't matter what definition of sentient you give me. Let's just say sentient means you're self-aware and you know you exist. Prove to me that you're self-aware.
I just did. You just said I did, because I said I think, therefore I am. So you said that I proved that I exist.
No. That proves that you exist.
That's what you
Prove
said.
to me you know it.
Oh, did I know that I exist? Ich weiß, dass ich weiß nichts.
Yeah, but you see, the problem is what you're proving to me is you know how to regurgitate the words that on the surface. In other words, I might look at you and say you're nothing more than a program, Charlie. You haven't proved to me that you're sentient, you're self-aware.
Yeah.
You see the problem I'm trying to point out?
Okay. Prove to me that AI is not self-aware.
Exactly. This is part of our problem, folks, is that we think we can prove things that we can't. Now, I know it's going to be a very philosophical day, but thanks, Charlie. End of experiment.
You're making my head hurt.
Yes, I'm going to really make your head hurt before we're done today. But this is the point, folks. This is the point. And as we go on today, you're going to understand a little better. I hope. If I succeed in what I'm trying to do today, it'll make more sense. Whether or not you're going to wrap your head totally around it, I don't know. But I will prove to you that everything we think we know about this universe demands the existence of an existential creator. And I'll get to these definitions as we go on. Mary Ann Boatwright says, get the Tylenol out. Yes, it's going to be one of those days. Apologize, but this is one of these things we have to do. So the apologetic arguments for God or the existence of God. Well, this man here in the wheelchair that goes says there is no God. How did he get there? From the 2 books that he wrote. Okay. Time out. We're going to beat up on Stephen Hawking a little bit. A Brief History of Time. You see here, my edition is the updated and expanded 10th anniversary edition. Ta-da-ta-da! In the original book, Mr. Hawking, Dr. Hawking, don't want to slight him, proved that the universe had a beginning and that it was expanding into nothingness, that it was not going to go through a constant state of exploding into existence, expanding, stopping, contracting into an infinitely small spot, and then re-exploding again, which is what people thought beforehand. He proved that it was going to expand into nothingness. And for a brief period in his lifetime, he said, that means there has to be a God. And all of his atheist scientific friends jumped all over him. So he came back out and he wrote this book. This is the grand design. This book proves that the universe creates itself. So you don't need a God anymore. And there's a problem in this book. The equations that, quote unquote, prove the universe creates itself require things like the square root of -1. It's irrational math. They use imaginary numbers. Do you realize that by definition, you can't have a square root of -1? It's an absurdity. But did you know that mathematicians use these type of imaginary numbers all the time to make their equations work? And then they declare to you how the universe works based on imaginary math. Yes. If that sounds crazy to you, that's because it is. And the mathematician will tell me, yeah, imagine that. And then the mathematician will tell me, well, Joe, you just don't understand. No, I understand very well. Mr. Mathematician, you don't understand for the very same reason that Mr. Hawking didn't understand. In the intro to his book, he says, philosophy is dead. The love of knowledge is dead. So why are you doing science, Mr. Hawking? Because that's what philosophy means. Philo, love of, love, brotherly love, ology, knowledge. Okay. So Mr. Hawkins has told me that I don't need to read his book because the love of learning is dead. And that's what he spent his whole life doing, trying to discover, learn about the universe. So cool. Let's get rid of Mr. Hawking. He's a waste of time. Per his own words. It's called logical extension, Mr. Hawking. But there's more. This book, I've introduced you to it. This is A Case for the Creator. It's by Lee Strobel. Lee Strobel, and this is one that I highly recommend everybody read, listen to on audio, whatever. Lee Strobel was a lawyer, and he had turned into a journalist, a real journalist, one who actually did investigation and wanted facts, who, what, where, how, when, and why. And he broke the story, if I'm not mistaken, he broke the story on Ford hiding the Pinto wagon's fault in the gas tank back in the 70s, and that they had decided it was cheaper to just pay for the deaths of the people who were going to needlessly die than it was to recall and fix all the cars. So they just did that. Well, he was an atheist, married to a Christian woman, and he was going to prove to his wife that her faith was stupid. And he went out to prove that Christianity was a fake religion. It's just false. There's nothing to it. Ended up proving the opposite. Ended up being able to prove that God not only exists, but that Jesus was God and was crucified and resurrected. And he says now he can make that case in a U.S. court of law beyond shadow of a doubt. And he's correct. But now in this book, he goes over all of the things we know about the existence of a creator. And we have since learned a lot more. When he wrote this book in 2004, the case has gotten even stronger for a creator. They won't tell you this in your school. Now, let's deal with the concept of infinity. The idea that the universe is infinite age old. It's been around forever. It's always existed and it always will. Excuse me. I have explained to this several times on the show before. That's not possible. You cannot have a universe that's infinitely old. If you do, weird things start happening. And this is a way to help you grasp what we mean by weird. Impossible things start to happen. So I'm going to ask you to imagine I have an infinite number of marbles. Just marbles. I got an infinite number. The average person does not understand infinity. You can't. Not to a practical extent. And I'll explain as we get going. We're going to talk about infinity a little more. But I have an infinite number of marbles, and I give you every one of my marbles. That's cool. I just lost my marbles. I can quit and go home now. I'm no longer the professor. Charlie has to take over. I gave all my marbles to Charlie. So how many marbles do I have left? None. Infinity minus infinity is nothing. But now let's say I have my infinite number of marbles back. I keep 4 of those marbles, and I give you the rest. Now that's infinity minus infinity, but now I have 4. Okay. Let's say I want to give you an infinite number of marbles, and this time what I'm going to do is I have my infinite number of marbles, and I give you the odd ones. How many marbles do I have left now? Infinite. Look at the screen. This is a mathematical equation. Infinity minus infinity equals 0. Infinity minus infinity equals 4. Infinity minus infinity equals infinity. How can I get 3 different answers for the same exact equation? You can't. That's called an absurdity. This is why you're not allowed to do certain things in mathematics. They have ways around it, but what it is you're just dealing with a concept. Now, why does this prove that the universe can't be infinite number of years old? Well, if I had an infinite number of years in the past, or better yet, occurrences, this happened, that caused this, that caused this, that caused this. If I have an infinite number of occurrences, then I can never get to the beginning of the universe. Well, that's the point, Joe. The universe didn't have a beginning. It's just always been. How? All things that come into being have a beginning. You and I had a beginning. All material things have a beginning. Where'd the universe start? And you're never going to be able to find out because you can't go far enough back to find it. But there's another problem with this. If the universe is infinitely number of years old, what it leads us to is something called an absurdity, logical absurdity. It's also known as reductio. This is from the Britannica Online. Reductio ad absurdum. It's a fallacy. In logic, it's a form of refutation showing contradictory or absurd consequences following upon a premise as a matter of logical necessity. A form of the reductio ad absurdum argument known as indirect proof or reductio ad impossible is one that proves a preposition by showing that its denial conjoined with other propositions previously proved or accepted leads to a contradiction. In common speech, the term reductio ad absurdum refers to anything pushed to an absurd limit. So what the heck does that mean? It means if you tell me, I tell you the universe had a beginning, and you say, no, it's infinite. Well, the problem with infinite is it leads to this, and that's an absurdity. And from an absurdity, all things follow. So I've just disproved your claim that the universe is infinite, which means it's finite. We also run into this problem. If the universe is infinitely old, we run into the problem of the impossibility of traversing the infinite. And simply put, this principle means if you have an infinite number of past results, then you will always have one more event to add to the past before you can arrive at the now, which means we can never arrive at the now. Essentially, this is the practical application of infinity. If there are an infinite number of results that happened or infinite number of actions or events in the universe before you were born, there will always be one more event before you're born, and another, and another, and another, and you can never be born. Now, I know this doesn't make a lot of sense to people. And that's because the average person has never sat down and been taught to understand what infinity is. And they don't think about it. They don't think about its consequences of what it means to them in their lives. See, the true problem here is that infinity is an artificial construction, kind of like society. It's a concept that only exists in our minds. It does not and cannot exist in reality. Therefore, the universe must have had a beginning. Logisticians have known this for a very long time. They've known this for this reason. Infinity is an impossibility. It does not exist in nature. It never will. It can't. Ergo, he be wrong. Yes, Mr. Hawking, brilliant as you are, world loved you, all your awards, your major degrees, and all this stuff, and we've just proved most of the work you did in your whole life was garbage. And yes, folks, I do mean that. We have proved it. It's garbage. You just did. But since he threw philosophy out the window, he also threw logic out the window. And when he threw logic out the window, he threw his science out the window. So there goes his God and Savior. Now we're going to get to this. The universe has a beginning. So now we run into something else that the ancients have known about. It's called the uncaused cause. I know it as the unmoved mover. The philosophers tend to use that phrase more than the uncaused cause. It basically states this, and we're doing this on purpose. Real quick, before we get going, this is not what the unmoved mover is. This is a modern rendition of this argument. It's flawed. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to show you a flawed version of this argument for now, okay? We're going to use it, and then we're going to explain why they put this version out instead of the real one, the one that I was taught in philosophy school. So, the uncaused cause. Everything has a cause. That cause must be caused by something else. But you cannot have an infinite chain of causes. It must all begin somewhere, or there will be no reason for movement to get started at all. See, like I said, you can't go back far enough to find the beginning. Therefore, there must be something or someone that does not need to be caused by something else. The only thing powerful enough to not need a cause would be God, or what we define as God. Therefore, God must exist. This is not the way we should define this, but it works for now. And this is basically what they're saying. This is, everything has an equal and opposite reaction. So here we are going into infinity. Infinity is at the bottom of our picture. That's just time immemorial going forward. Well, we had a beginning. So everything in the universe had a beginning. But what caused the first thing to happen? What caused the universe to come into existence? What was it? What was that first cause? And whatever it was could not have had a cause. Well, I don't like the way they've put that, but it is close to correct. It's kind of like this. Is this thing moving? Yes or no? If the thing is not moving, then it's God. If it is moving, is it moved by something else? Yes and no. If no, it's moving, but it's not moved by anything else. It has no cause or no reason to be moving, then that's God. But yes, if it's been moved by something else, can the moved mover proceed to infinity? If yes, then you keep going to an infinity. If no, it's God. What's this got to do with anything, Joe? Well, the whole universe is in motion. Everything in the universe is in motion. So is this thing moving? Yes, the universe is moving. Okay. Is it moved by something else? Yes, it's moved by whatever the Big Bang was that put it into motion. Can the moved movers proceed to infinity? Yes, Hawking's did prove that. The universe is just going to expand into nothingness forever and ever and ever. Amen. Okay, well, then that's not God. But is this thing moving? Was the cause that created the universe moving? No, that's God. Was the thing that is, is it moved by something else? Can the thing that caused the universe be moved by something else? Can you go backwards? No, there's God. Can the moving thing proceed to infinity? Well, no, because it already is in infinity. There's God. Every which way you want to slice and dice this one, you end up with what we call God. But now the critics will come along, and this is the criticism of the Big Bang theory of the unmoved mover. Many scientists think that the Big Bang and not God created the universe. So the event created itself. That's what they're saying. Concept. We're still working with definitions, but even at a more basic level. Don't worry about a word. How did the Big Bang create itself? The Big Bang is an event, not a cause. It's an event. Okay. So we've got criticism of the cosmological argument based on a false premise to begin with, a self-contradicting premise. Let me rephrase this. Many scientists now think that the event and not the cause created the universe. So the thing created itself. Okay. Then by definition, the thing would be God, right? Well, that's Guyism. It says many scientists believe that there was no space or time before the Big Bang, so nothing came before it. True. There was no space or time and nothing did come before it. So hold on to that. So they're going to say, well, that proves there can't be a God. Well, no, there can't be a pagan God. But hold on. We're talking about something different. Some scientists are still unclear about the cause of the Big Bang and think there may have been something before the Big Bang. You just said, some said there was nothing, some said there is something. If there was something before the Big Bang, now we're into infinity. We've already proven infinity can't exist. So these people are still, these scientists who say, well, there was something beforehand, are still clinging to an absurdity. They're not scientists. They're irrational. If you cling to an absurdity, by definition, you are irrational. By definition, if you're irrational, you're not a scientist performing science according to the scientific method because you believe in hokum pokum. Wait a minute. I thought atheists said we can't have God because that's believing in hokum pokum. You're starting to get the problem here. Yes, if you're an atheist, I'm going to be a little critical to you. I'm going to be a little harsh on you because you don't believe the things you say. And I don't like hypocrites or intellectually dishonest people. It's one of the reasons I hate myself. It says, even now, scientists are conducting experiments to find out how the first matter was created. They don't know. They don't have an answer for this. So the uncaused first cause. The uncaused first caused according to Stephen Hawking in The Grand Design. He agrees that the universe looks tuned for life, fine-tuning. His philosophical presupposition, or his bias, is for materialism. He's an atheist. Scientific determinism, page 34 of his book. Because there is a law like gravity, the universe can and will create itself out of nothing, page 180. Okay. All right, Mr. Hawkins, let's keep going. This is something else Mr. Hawking said. He said, in order to understand the origin of the universe, let me blow this up for everybody because it's a little harder to see. We need to combine the general theory of relativity with quantum theory. To ask what happened before the beginning of the universe would be a meaningless question because there is nothing south of the South Pole. Hawking, 2015. So this is a picture of the Big Bang. So he says there's no reason to ask what happened before the Big Bang because there was nothing before the Big Bang. But look at the picture he draws. There's a quantum fluctuation. If you have a quantum fluctuation, it implies a quantum field. A quantum field is not nothing. This is a self-defeating argument. And I got this little meme here. It says, you'll keep using this meme, this word meme. I don't think it means what you think it means. They keep using this word nothing. I do not think nothing means what the scientists think it means. They'll talk about the singularity. Well, yeah, there's a singularity inside the black hole. No, there isn't. No, there isn't. I said, well, the universe started with a singularity. No, it couldn't have. Why? Do you know what a singularity is? Singularity is nothing, Jack. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's no thing. Singularity is a point of infinite density and infinite gravity. What did we already learn about infinity? It doesn't exist. Can't exist. Inside or outside of nature, an infinite can't exist the way we understand it. It doesn't exist. A singularity is a mathematical point in a three-dimensional world. You know, it's XYZ axis. It doesn't exist. Have you ever graphed a singularity in math? What you get is an asymptote. You keep getting closer and closer and closer to that point, but you're never going to get there because, oh, look what infinity does for me. When I'm looking at this point on the map, it's 0.111, X, Y, and Z axis, 0.1, 1X, 1Y, 1Z. But then it's also 0.1, 0.99 there, 0.98, 0.97, 0.96, and we're going to go back and back and back until it's 0.99999. You can never get to that point. You never can. As you try to approach it, you're never going to get there. You can't get to the singularity. The singularity does not exist. It has no space. So how could all matter be packed into that space and have infinite gravity? The singularity it's infinity. It's a logical construct. It just doesn't work. It doesn't exist. It's nothing. We talk about it as though it's something because it's like Mr. Hawking's imaginary math. It makes his equations work. Well, we talk about the singularity because it makes our concept in our brain work better for the Big Bang. Everything started at one point. And by the way, if you look into the science behind this here is not the picture of the Big Bang. It doesn't go forward. Let me wait for this to catch up. It doesn't go forward the way we think it does. What happened at the Big Bang is the whole universe was filled, not in one direction, 360 degrees in all directions. Okay. And it was not a case of it started from the singularity and then it expanded out real infinitely fast and then slowed down and kept expanding at the rate we're going now. It was like somebody said, let there be light. And the whole universe was just there all of a sudden. All of it, everywhere it's supposed to be, expanding at its constant rate. It's like it just popped into existence. This we know. This we think we know. Science believes it knows this. So everything Mr. Hawkins is telling us is just there's a problem with it. The problem comes in here. Nothing. What do we mean by nothing? There was nothing. No thing. Okay. Understand. No space, no time, no quantum energy field, no nothing. Say, well, I want you to envision nothing. Yes, sir?
No law.
No law, no gravity. So Mr. Hawkins has got a problem. So Charlie, I want you to do me a favor here. Envision nothing. Picture nothing in your head. What do you see in your head when you picture nothing?
I can't.
Yeah, well, most people, when you're thinking that you can't, that's right. Because most people that I've encountered, they think of something like a black nothingness.
Right.
The problem is black is something.
It's black.
And black is something. Yes, exactly. This is where your head's going to hurt. We are talking about nothing. You can't even think about nothing. You know why? Because your thought about nothing is something.
Is something. Yes.
This is the problem with the folks. That's Mr. Hawking's problem. Is he knows that this doesn't work. You cannot mathematically get something from an absolute nothing. So he invents the pre-existing quantum energy field. And because you have gravity in there, quantum flux eventually creates the universe, which is something. Which goes back to an infinite existence, which we know can't exist. Because if you have an infinite existence and it's going to have a quantum flux that causes the universe, there's going to be an infinite number of events before the quantum flux, when therefore the universe can never be created.
But what if we're all just hamsters on a wheel?
Or riding along on the back of a cosmic turtle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that still doesn't remove the problem. That tells you you can't know the true state of existence and reality, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. We've all seen this thing, is it a 6? Well, I can't do this. Two people looking at a 6 or a 9 on the ground.
Oh, right.
It's a 6, it's a 9, it's a 6, it's a 9. That proves that reality doesn't exist. Wrong. Somebody drew the number on the ground. That person knows whether it was a 6 or a 9. Reality exists. We just may not be able to know its true nature or form. Oh, this is going to get back. Well, what do we have here?
Well, we fighting each other.
Oh, Natasha says we're living on the back of the Arctic tortoise. Yes. Along with his giant, we're all swimming in the giant cup of brandy or whiskey on the back of the Arctic tortoise.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get back to the fun and games here, folks. Put this back up. So a singularity is a thing, which means, the universe came from nothing. It was a singularity. A singularity is a thing. It can't come from a singularity. This is why we create it. It's a concept to help us understand. Gravity is a thing. An energy field's a thing. Quantum fluctuation is a thing. Therefore, Hawking's is wrong per his own argument. Put real numbers. This is another thing. If you put the real numbers back into Mr. Hawking's current equations, that proves the universe just creates itself. When you put real numbers back in there, he gets back to the original Big Bang expanding into nothing, which gets back to his conclusion of God. So Mr. Hawking's arguments, his books, all of his life's work is self-defeating. Now, let me put this to you in a way that I found online. This was on TikTok, and this is absolutely brilliant how this guy does this. I think here's one curse word in there. I don't know, so you might not want to for the language, but I'm going to put the link in your comment section. But essentially, it's this. The atheist objects to a creator that cannot be seen, touched, tasted, heard, smelled, or proven. But the atheist is okay with the idea of a universe that was created by something that cannot be seen, touched, tasted, heard, smelled, or proven, and created out of something that cannot be seen, touched, tasted, heard, smelled, or proven. And when he dies, the atheist believes he will merge back into something that cannot be seen, touched, tasted, heard, smelled, or proven. But how can that nothing exist? I thought that unless I can prove its existence by seeing it, touching it, tasting it, hearing it, or smelling it, the atheist doesn't want to, he calls that supernatural, and doesn't want to be bothered with that. And yet he believes in a supernatural creator who he will, when he dies, merge back in with. He'll go back into nothing was created by nothing, and he will eventually go back into nothing. And therefore, the atheist believes in a more magical, i.e., supernatural creator than those of us who believe in the Bible. And that's actually true. So the next time an atheist tells you they don't want to hear any talk about something that can't be proven, ask them how they can be an atheist then. You can't prove their belief system because you can't prove nothing. Remember, you can't prove a negative. That's the atheist's best argument against God. You can't prove a negative. Can't prove that the universe came from nothing either. Although we know it had to come from nothing, but you can't prove the existence of nothing. Oh, wait a minute. I just did. Twice. Yes, sir?
Here we go.
James William Holt. Universal inflation has been described as raising bread while being cooked in the oven. Imagine that the bread is space and the raisins are points of matter in space. And as the bread expands, in other words, cooks, the raisins, points of matter, moved farther from one another. Though expansion of space isn't anywhere as fast as the speed of light, the cumulative expansion of space across vast distance mathematically outpaces even the speed of light. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Okay, what's he saying? He's saying that, and I know the space and the raisins and the bread and the raisins, just, you're talking about a bubble that is expanding faster than you can see the expansion. It's going faster than the speed of light. What? Oh, yeah. Space is, we'll get to this. Hold on, Mr. Holt. You're ahead of the lesson. Here it is. What is this? I don't know if the class knows what this is, but this is a picture of the farthest that man can see into the past of the universe. This is the Big Bang. This is the after effect of the light of the Big Bang. That's as far as we can see. Okay, that's as far back in time as we can see. We cannot see anything on the other side of that. Why? Because there is nothing on the other side of it. What? You just can't see, Joe. Exactly. Speed of light. If the light were created 10 trillion years ago, you'd still be able to see it because you're 10 trillion years in the future. You'd be able to see the residual effects of the light 10 trillion years ago. Just like we can see this 14 billion years ago. So we think. That's the edge of the universe. And it's expanding. But the universe is supposedly expanding faster than we can see the light. Yes, it's cosmic background radiation, but essentially it's light. It's a form of light. It's the shadow of the light from when the Big Bang came into play. So, oh, by the way, quick rabbit. This proves the universe had a point of existence, that it came into being. This proves the universe had a beginning. That picture is physical proof. We've now proven the universe had a beginning 3 different ways. Mathematically, by logical deduction, by physical observation. Mr. Hawking should have known that. He did know this. So he chose to believe in a nothing that can't be proven. And he claims he's science. I'm sorry. This is why I ridicule these people. And if he had held on to his philosophy, he might have actually done good, sound science. But his science is fallacious. Well, thereby, by definition, it's not science. So here's another thing that we know. Without the Big Bang, many elements necessary for the existence of our life could not exist, as the formation of these elements requires an amount of heat far greater than that found inside any of the hottest stars in this universe. They could have only existed in the heat, the unimaginable heat that was present at the first moment of the Big Bang. So I'm going to stay on target now. We will get to what Mr. Holt was talking about with the expansion of the universe. I promise you. I've got it a little bit farther down in the lesson plan when we deal with the cosmological constants, because it gets even better. Hold on to his quote there, Charlie. We might want it again. So what the atheists will tell you is The uncaused cause. Where did God come from then? Who caused God? Swing and a miss, Mr. Atheist, Mr. Scoffer, Mr. Skeptic. You missed the fastball, son. I'm my best foghorn leghorn there. The postulate is that which has a beginning must have a cause. Notice, I told you about this. All the memes I used were written by people who do not actually understand this argument, the unmoved mover, or who are purposely trying to obfuscate it because they know how powerful it is, how powerful the implication is. So let's go ahead and fix it. The theory of the unmoved mover instead of the uncaused cause. That which has a beginning must have a cause. The universe had a beginning. Therefore, the universe had a cause. But what caused the universe to come into being when there was nothing pre-existing to the cause? That's the existential creator. The creator who exists outside of space and time. Ergo, infinity, but only because time does not exist for the creator. It's not a physical constant. He doesn't live. That's how he can be infinite, because the concept of infinite does not apply to him. That's how he can be infinite in volume. There is no height, width, and depth for him. He lives outside of space. So he can be infinite that way too, because the definition does not apply to him. And he is uncreated. He did not have a beginning, because their beginning implies time. He has no time. Ergo, no beginning, no end, no space, no, nothing. Nothing the way you and I think. Yes, sir.
So he's outside of time and space. Would he also be outside of matter?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Be something. Whoops. Sorry about that, Charlie.
That's okay.
Be something we would call spirit, for lack of a better word.
Well, right.
But it could not be energy, because energy is matter. It's something.
Yeah,
So it would be the word we call ephemeral, an ephemeral spirit. Do we have a phone call?
I don't know. But nope, must be just a message of some sort.
So have we covered your question now?
Well, to the level that I am right now, my head is hurting.
I'm trying to go slower today. Hopefully people notice. If you've got questions, please post them. If you need me to stop and re-explain it, please tell Charlie or Natasha so I can stop and explain it. I am trying to go slower, and those of you who know me know that I am not speaking at my normal pace, because I could do this much faster. I understand this stuff. This is why when people tell me, well, you can't make fun of Dr. Hawking, he's smarter than you. I don't think so. I know how arrogant that sounds, but water's wet, fire's hot. So the existential creator, aka God, and we say the creator because Occam tells us not to add more causes than that which are logically necessary. And logic dictates that there must be a creator, but there does not have to be more than one creator. Therefore, the creator, the existential creator. All right. Now we're going to start getting into the stuff that Mr. Holt was bringing up. What is cosmological fine-tuning? Ooh, this is going to be good. These two books right here. These are my favorites so far. I've got others, but right here. These are written by Dr. Hugh Ross of the Ontario School of California. I think he's in charge. He may have even retired now, but when he wrote him, I think he was in charge of the physics department, astrological or astrophysics department of that university in California. But these books are going to cover what we're about to talk about, and they will explain it in detail. I'm going to warn you, if you don't like math, you're not going to like these books. But if you're interested, they will still, in the most tabletop language possible, that, or at least that I've encountered, explain to you what we're about to cover in better detail than what we're about to cover. So first things first, I want to explain. These books were written in 2008 and 2009. At that time, there were some 700 known constants Universal constants, you know, the strong and weak force of attraction, gravity is a constant, the ratios of carbon in the universe is all these things, you know, electric and magnetic forces, all these type of things. There was some 700 constants that had to have their precise values in order for the universe to exist, let alone for life to exist. The probability of this happening by chance is 1 in 10 to the 700th power. That's one time in 700,000 zeros. Or is it 700 million? It gets big. The number gets big quick. Okay, 700,000. All right. The odds of statistical zero are 1 in 10 to the 50th power. Now, I know math makes people's heads hurt, but that's 1 in 50,000 zeros. That's the number. That's not 50,000. That's 1 with 50,000 zeros after it. Remember, a billion only has what? 1, 2, 3 is hundreds, 4, 5, 6 is thousands, 7, 8, 9 is, it's only got, a billion only has 9 zeros after it. 9. So the chance that the universe just happened to exist is 1 with 700,000 zeros after it. This is the statistical chance of zero, 1 with 50,000 zeros after it. Do you know what the statistical chance of winning the Florida lottery is? 1 in 14 million. 14 with 6 zeros after it. Okay, what am I telling you? I'm telling you that the odds of the universe happening by chance the way it has is 650 times greater than statistical zero. That's a mathematical proof that the universe was created on purpose. That is a mathematical proof that it did not happen by random chance. Cannot happen by random chance. Did not, cannot, will not, period, full stop, end of story. Something created this universe with purpose and intent, something of immense intelligence, infinite intelligence. But wait, there's more. The universe is a sealed system. No, it didn't. Yes, it is. It's just bigger than your imagination, which gets us back into Mr. Holt's comment right here, where he's talking about how the universe is expanding. Well, that universe is expanding faster than we can see it. What's the real problem here? If you understand physics, then thinking of the universe as a sealed system, the energy and the matter that must constantly be added at an impossibly precise amount and rate to maintain the cosmological balances in this universe. In other words, matter is still being created. Energy is still being added to the system. Things are being adjusted in real time at impossibly finite, just absolute precision beyond belief. Otherwise, the universe collapses on itself. What or who is doing that? And how? It's a serious question. I'm serious. Mr. Hawking, you never even touched on that. You and your colleagues don't address that. In order for the universe to expand the way it's doing and for the cosmological constants to remain the same, in order for the ratio of carbon to mass in the universe as the universe expands, well, there has to be more mass added. Otherwise, gravitational constants would change. So as you're adding mass, you have to keep the carbon ratio the same. Otherwise, life ceases to exist. And as you're doing all of this, you have to add energy. Otherwise, the strong and weak magnetic forces will change and the universe will cease to exist. Do you see what I'm saying? Where's all that coming from? Where is the additional matter coming from? That's like me saying, okay, I'm going to magnify this book into 10 books. I'm thinking as hard as I can. 10 books, 10 books, 10 books. Well, I can't get 10 books out of one book. There's not enough matter here. So where's it coming from?
But isn't there something that I think that when you get into quantum physics, this may not be true, but if I remember being taught in physics, matter can neither be created nor destroyed is one of the supposed laws. But that when you get into quantum, I think it's got to be changed. But from what you're saying, that cannot be true.
It can't be. Use the force.
Use the force.
It can't be true. And it can't be true in quantum physics either. Now, we're going to stop here for a moment, folks. This might seem like, okay, Joe, this got nothing to do with God. Oh, yes, it does. Oh, yes, it does. We're peering into the very essence and nature of the supreme being. We're not arguing about which one. Quantum physics. What they'll tell you is that in quantum physics, things can bloop in and out of existence. By definition, that's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's not possible. Well, Joe, well, where did it go then? Exactly. Where did it go? You believe in parallel universes, but you don't believe in a spirit world. What if they're the same thing? And what if heaven is the same thing? What if that's your parallel universe? And what if it's actually part of this universe? It's just 3 different dimensions you cannot perceive. Well, that item could be blooping in and out of those other 3 dimensions. So we don't see it, but it's still there. Now, quantum physicists, the best of my understanding, the best of my knowledge that I've seen, they don't think about this. They don't even and they won't even entertain that idea. Well, here's the thing. If they would, string theory solves all their problems. But they won't chase string theory because that means they have to acknowledge 3 other dimensions where all your dark matter is hiding.
Marianne, pass the Tylenol.
Mr. Holt says, Joe, scientists attempt to solve the dilemma with the introduction of the placeholders, dark matter and dark energy, matter and energy that conveniently cannot be observed or measured. Correct. Now, Mr. Holt, you're on to something now. What if our universe has 2 heights, 2 widths, and 2 depths, but they're at 90-degree planes that they intersect each other? Now, the ones we can't see the other ones, but they're there, and because it's dimensional, we can't imagine this. You have to conceptually abstract conception. But let's say I have access to both of those dimensional fields. I could walk through walls in this world. Just walk right through them while you're watching me. And I have access to that other. Well, what if the 90% of the matter and energy in this world that we've just made up is actually in those other 3 dimensions? What we think of as heaven. Well, those dimensions that interact in both areas, both dimensional worlds that we're talking about here, like gravity would interact beyond both. So the dark matter would influence the physics in our visible world. The dark matter would be the matter in the other universe, and the gravity would work in both. So that solves that problem. It also solves the problem of subatomic particles apparently popping in and out of existence. They're not. They're bouncing between dimensional worlds. And all of a sudden, string theory now comes into play, where they've said string theory won't solve the problem, because string theory is the idea that a particle is just a string. It's part of a filament that goes through both of these, all the way through time in both dimensions. This solves the problem. This unifies quantum physics with the physics that we see today. But you know why they won't go there, Mr. Holt? Because they have to admit to the possibility of heaven. And they have to admit to a possibility of heaven that is not supernatural. It's part of this world, this universe. It's just one we can't see. Well, Joe, that's the definition of supernatural. Not if it is part of this universe. Then it's super perceptual. And atheists are fine with that. Remember, we've already proven nothing comes from nothing, and nothing happens because of nothing. And when I die, I go back to the nothing without even being nothing. Okay, how many people have I lost here?
Here's our onboard physicist here. So you guys argue over this.
Ray, 10 to a power is written with 1 as the number of zeros, not 1,000 times that number. For example, 10 to the second power is 100. 1 to the 2 zeros. Yeah. But it's a higher number than that. It's 700 things in probability. It starts to expand. I may have done the math wrong, but the picture visual and the explanation is definitely correct, Ray. When you're doing probability and you got 700 possible things, what you have to do is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 until you get to 700. That's how you do probability odds. So it
should have been n to the nth.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
that
1
weird
times
thing,
10 to
yes.
the 1 to the 700. It's crazy. I know that numbers are hard to deal with on the screen. I was just looking for a visual for folks. I got you, Ray. I'm already having a hard time holding on to the audience. Let's not get worse. What we got here from Mr. Holt, aka Water Jug. He says, I've watched so many string theory alternate dimension videos that I can honestly wrap my head around what you're saying. If that's true, Mr. Holt, then you know that I just gave you a very simple, elegant explanation of the problems they've encountered. And then you also know why they don't want to go there. They don't want to go there because if you do, it points to an existential creator who is constantly involved in his creation, which means it can be no deist God. There has to be a personal, involved in the universe and in everything going on in the universe creator. Well, if you're going to go with that, you only have 2 options. And both of them point to the God of the Bible, but that's going to be next week. We're going to deal with that next week. All right. We're not done. We've got more. We're going to go to the break. When we come back, we're going to start with Darwin. The Arctic tortoise, the fallacy was just stated. Just believe me because I say. You want me to go there, tortoise? I will. Ray and if he's listening, Mr. Zinker and Water Jug might be the only 3 people that'll stay with me. Do the research, read the books. I'm giving you the information. Go follow it up. I know that the tortoise likes to nitpick at me, but I know what I'm saying is right. And I know because I know why I know. So before you tell me it's a fallacy, tortoise, you got to go make sure I'm wrong. Because an appeal to authority is only a fallacy if the authority is wrong. Or if that's the only reason you're appealing to it. I told you to trust me here this time because I know I'm right. I know I'm right because I know what I know. And I know why I know it. And I know what you're going to find if you go behind me. Technically not a fallacy. Because I didn't appeal to me. I appealed to all the minds that have gone before me, who have all found capital T truth or missed it for the same reasons. So nice try, tortoise. A little personal dig there. We're going to go to the break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Darwin. And we'll go from there. See you in 6.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Yes. All right. Let's handle the first ones. Okay. The tortoise wanted me to, the Arctic tortoise says he wants me to prove that, comment here. He says, okay, so how do you know that you're correct? How do I know I'm correct? Just because I say so? No, he says, prove it. Prove it exists, just like you asked Charlie in the beginning of the show to prove he exists. If you'll remember in the beginning of the show, I told Charlie, I said, no, you can't prove it deductively, but you can prove it inductively. I didn't tell you Charlie can't prove he exists. He can't prove it deductively, meaning A plus B plus C, D has to be the answer. All things that I can see, hear, smell, touch, and whatever. But I can prove something exists that I cannot see, hear, touch, and smell through indirect evidence. Another way to put this is circumstantial evidence. I hear a hoofbeat. I smell horse manure. I got horses around. Horse flies around me. I hear neighing. I smell what smells like a horse that's been sweating, but I can't see the horse. I see hoof prints on the ground around me. I hear it running. Do I have enough evidence to suggest that there might be a horse around me? Yes, I do. So I can prove the existence of the horse that way. Okay, it's how much evidence you have determines how strong your proof is, and this is what a lot of people do in this world. So Charlie's a horse. Very good, Natasha. Charlie is a horse. Of a horse is a horse, of course. So this is one of the ways we do this. In a lot of things that we don't realize are proved indirectly, inductively, by circumstantial evidence. Much of your world revolves around that. It's still a proof. It's just not deductive proof. It's not what they would call scientific proof. It's philosophical or mathematical or other types of proofs, which gives us something else. How have I proved that I'm right? Well, so far we've done this mathematically, logically. We've done it by observation, which is deductively. We can do this through biophysics, biochemistry. We can come at it every which way we want. And all of the conclusions still point toward creator. That's an inductive proof that the preponderance of the evidence is beyond shadow of a doubt that there must be a creator. And that's how that works. Now, there were a couple of other things real quick. Yeah, Marianne had asked, I know I'm not going to put her comment up there, but she was saying, how does she keep up with some of this stuff, not having a mathematical or scientific foundation background from it. And Mr. Holt says, I read Strobel's Case for Christ when I got saved at the ripe old age of 34. A great book that I cannot recommend enough. And he's right. Well, this is written the same way, the case for the creator. This is written for the layperson that does not have the scientific background to follow, like maybe a Dr. Hugh Ross. But it says, it addresses some of the problems, and then it goes over the evidence of cosmology, the evidence of physics, the evidence of astronomy, the evidence of biochemistry, the evidence of biological information, and the existence of the conscious mind. These all areas that point to the necessity for a creator. They show you that the only way to answer the questions science has come up with is with a creator. There's one other thing. Mr. Holt had said that he bounces back and forth. Let me see if I find his comment real quick. It was while we were in the break. He says, I've vacillated between a personal, ever-present and guiding God and a clockwork God as I've navigated the scientific discoveries in the cosmological field. In other words, as he does his astrophysics and quantum physics and everything. Okay, there's a God who's involved and there's a God who isn't. Well, Mr. Holt, apply logic to this. If you have an expanding universe that has to have energy and matter constantly added at precise times, at precise amounts and rates, that requires somebody monitoring this universe. Now, the clockwork God would have to set the universe up to add to itself on its own without his presence. Well, something cannot create itself that way. That's a lot that we've already covered. That's a logical inconsistency. You can't make matter out of nothing. So he can't, that God couldn't create the universe to be self-generating matter. That's a logical inconsistency. That can't be. So the only other way this happens is if the clockwork God creates another God to leave back here that can create something out of nothing, monitor, in which case you still have a personal interested God. The idea of the clockwork God is a self-defeating theory. It's a self-defeating concept. It created specifically to get around the logical conclusion of what we do know and what we can think our way through. everything we've covered so far points to a conscious, personally involved, active monitoring creator. That's what the world wants to get away from. And that's what they're trying to do. So now we're going to go to our friend Darwin versus creation. Well, we all know that this isn't a theory. It's taught in school as fact. Oh boy, we're going to have some serious problems here. First of all, the little book here called Darwin's Black Box. I have the 10th anniversary edition. This is a good book, baby, and it's written for average people, and it will destroy Darwin. It's going to be like the Hulk grabbing Darwin, Loki, and beating him up and going, puny God, in the Marvel movies. You got 8 problems for Darwinism. The nature of mutations. We're going to cover a little of that. The limits of mutations. We're going to cover a little of that. Natural selection's limits. I'm not worried about that today. The Cambrian explosion. I'm not worried about that today. Lack of transitional fossils. I'm not worried about that today. Complex beginnings. Yes. Irreducible complexity. That we're going to look at. Mathematics and probability. I'm not worried about that today. This one, I want us to read. It's hard to read because the person who made the meme should have used different colors, but it says, irreducible complexity, how low can you go? Charles Darwin admitted, quote, if it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down, unquote. Scientists now know that many such entities exist. In Darwin's time, scientists could not see into what biochemist Michael Behe calls Darwin's black box, which is the cell. Darwin thought that the cell to be a simple structure. However, time and scientific advances have proven him wrong. Instead, there's advanced complexity all the way down. So, Frank Harold, a biochemist, says, we must concede that there are presently no detailed Darwinian accounts of the evolution of any biochemical system, only a variety of wishful speculations. Folks, when you look into what we have learned since Darwin is just, forget it. It's garbage. It should be thrown on the ash heap of history, but it isn't. Because if we throw away Darwin, what are we left with? Creation. Which points us to that creator that we don't want to acknowledge. Irreducible complexity. Let's focus here for a few minutes. A functional system is irreducibly complex if it contains a multi-part subsystem, i.e., a set of 2 or more interrelated parts that cannot be simplified without destroying the system's basic function. Irreducible complexity differs sharply from another form of complexity that may be called cumulative complexity. A system is cumulatively complex if the parts of the system can be arranged sequentially so that the successive removal of parts never leads to the complete loss of function. What? Okay. An irreducibly complex system or organ would be, well, let's hold off on that. Let's go to one. What is cumulative complexity? That one's easier. Society. Society is cumulatively complex. If I remove Joe, society keeps on humming just fine. If I remove all of us listening, society will continue to keep on humming. If I remove an entire state due to a flood, the world keeps on moving. It's a cumulative complex system. What we're looking for is a system that if you take one piece out of it, the function no longer works. Remember, Darwin said that evolution happens by cumulative evolutionary processes of, this is better than that, and the function. He's focusing on function. Okay, I get bigger because it serves the purpose of survival. Well, what we have here is one of the very common ones. This is a phalange. It's an E. coli phalange. This is a little hair that helps this microorganism move about in its environment. And it's an irreducibly complex machine. It's a biological machine, literally. There's a hook and a flange filament and an outer membrane and a biological bearing and another layer, blah, 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 and a stator and everything. If you take one of these things away, the point is this: you take just one of these things away, it no longer works. So in order for this hair to have developed, all of these things would have had developed together at the same time, perfectly functioning. You can't have, this thing just made a stator. The cell grew a stator. Well, the stator does nothing. It has no purpose. So it would be discarded under natural selection. So, okay, well, I grew a rotor. Well, the rotor's no good without your stator. So that'll be discarded. Well, I grew a rotor and a stator. Still no good. Doesn't serve any function. This is irreducible complexity. And this is the death nail. This is the stake through the proverbial vampire's heart of Darwin. Because this, folks, this is a cross-section of a cell. That cell cannot exist without all of those structures at the same time. We now know through microbiology that without all of those things, that cell can't live. And guess what has to come even before these things can be made? RNA and DNA have to exist in order to make those structures in the cell. But you need to be able to create RNA and DNA before you can create these structures. And RNA and DNA has the same problem. They are complex structures that are irreducibly complex in the way they're made. Microbiology has put the death knell to Darwinism. So why are we still teaching it? Intelligent design. Everything we know about DNA and RNA and microbiology and biological chemistry is pointing to intelligent design. Here's one of the processes I want to show you. It doesn't matter if you understand this in the chemistry. You don't have to understand the chemistry. That's not what's important. On the bottom of these pictures is a cell. On the top is the environment in which the cell is in. The cell has too much salt in it. It needs to get the salt out. Well, that little purple clam-like looking thing, that's a pump. And it has a process by which the salt molecule or whatever attaches itself to potassium, which lives inside the pump. And then the pump grabs up the salt molecule, closes, and then it opens up and spits the salt back out into the environment around it through chemical processes. Then more potassium comes back in from the environment into the pump, which closes the pump again. The pump now opens back into the cell, and the potassium goes out. And the potassium will bind back to more sodium. When that happens, it goes back into the pump, goes back and forth, back and forth. This is how the cell gets excess salt out of its system. This has to, first of all, you have to have the chemistry in place that works this pump. Then you have to have this pump created. The problem is, there's nothing by which that pump can be created. There is no natural mechanism for the cell when it divides to just pop that pump into place. This is a process that defies natural evolutionary explanations. And if you think let's look at this one. That's blood clotting. Oh my gosh, there's something like 23 steps that you have to go through. Okay, up at the top, and I know this isn't easy to read. I'll walk you through it best I can. At the top, you get cut. At the bottom, you have a coagulation in a blood clot. In between, step A has to happen. You're cut, which activates step B, which activates step C, which activates step D, which is a three-part system of D subset 1, subset 2, subset 3, which then activates part E and F, F being a subset of D subset 2 and 3, and E being a subset of D subset 1, which then activates G, which activates H, which activates J, which activates... See how it works? Now, if I take one of those things out of there, you don't have blood clotting. This is how blood clotting works in all animals. Systems don't get more complicated over time. They get less complicated. What that tells us is the blood clotting mechanism had to have been created this way from scratch. It is not possible for natural selection to create this system. And it is not possible for a living organism that uses blood, a higher level organism, to ever mutate into existence without the clotting mechanism already being in place. Now, stop. Say, well, Joe, maybe you just don't know how it works. I don't need to know the natural selection process that can make this work. All I need is the logic. Chicken and the egg. Okay? I need the clotting over here. I need the clotting system already in place, ready to go. So that's the egg. The first chicken is born. And the chicken has blood. I need this clotting system already in place. The problem is, until the first chicken comes along with blood, the first animal with actual blood, how the heck do I create the clotting system? Do you see the problem? I've never had an animal in existence that has blood. Okay, this animal's born and it's got blood for the very first time. How that happens, I don't know. I don't care. Just that doesn't matter. The very first animal comes into existence with blood. Well, Joe, it just died off, and this just keeps happening until one of them has a morphation that gets the blood clot. Oh, a morphation that has all of these multiple processes in place just perfectly. Somebody whistle up Occam for me. Occam's going to say, it's easier if you just say there was a creator. Yes, it is. Because I don't need as many causes. Occam works fine here. Matter of fact, Occam's the way we go with this. This was created this way, folks. Now, this gets even better. This is the process by which DNA fixes itself. What? Yes. When DNA mutates in the body and it's got a break, or it's called recombinant DNA or whatever, I think. And I don't know. I don't know how this all works perfectly. It doesn't matter. I don't need to. I'm aware of it. I know of its existence. I can go dig up more details when and if I need them. The point is, a mutation would be at the DNA level. So if I'm going to mutate into a jackalope, there has to be a mutation at the DNA level. So when it mutates and I have a jackalope, guess what the first mutation in that cell does the next time it divides and reproduces? It fixes the mutation. This is what cancer is. This is when this system goes crazy and doesn't work properly, and it kills the host because the immune system can't kill the cancer, doesn't recognize it. Cancer protects itself from the immune system. So the immune system is just cells growing out of, without proper order. It's just mutated cells. That's all cancer is. It's a blob of whatever. If DNA did not correct itself, that's what would happen to every living thing on the face of the planet. It would die from cancer, essentially. But it doesn't. Why? Because it corrects itself. Yes, sir?
So when you inject RNA into your body, which is the building blocks of DNA. Anyway.
Yes, you are changing the human genome into something other than human. So let's chase a rabbit. My buddy, the jackalope. Okay. It's a fictional creature, and I think it was created on Saturday Night Live or something.
Hey, I've seen those.
Fast to me, you can never catch me. No, you've never. You haven't seen a jackalope.
Yeah, I've seen them. I've seen them.
Where?
On a wall.
Somebody gave a rabbit and an antlers to a taxidermist and made a jackalope, right?
Well, yeah, but
all right. So let's talk about my buddy, the jackalope. Here's how evolution is supposed to work according to Darwin. The first jackalope mutates into existence. Hey, here I am, fast as fast can be. You'll never catch me. So I've got a jackalope. It's a girl jackalope. And she wants to make more jackalopes. So she's looking. She can't find no boy jackalopes because she's the very first. And she dies. No more jackalopes. Okay, let's just say that it's a random mutation that happens twice. Got boy jackalope, girl jackalope. It just happens to be that they're 3 states away. And they never find each other. And they both die. I've yet to create my new species. Okay. Boy jackalope, girl jackalope are created this time in the same town, and they find each other and they start boying and girling. No babies. Why not, Joe? Well, it's kind of like a mule. A mule from a donkey and a horse, they can't breed. They don't make other babies. Mules don't breed. You have to make your mule every time from a donkey and a horse. I think that's the way that works, but this is one of the problems with biology that might happen. So now my jackalopes not only have to have a male and a female, same time, same place, same area, they have to be able to breed. And then when they do breed, offspring have to be jackalopes too. That's not a guarantee. Just like if you have a boy and a girl and one of us has a birth defect and we have children, it's very likely that the children will be normal. You can have a mama and daddy dwarf, human dwarfs, and it's very likely you're going to have regular sized children. It's because it doesn't work this way. Not as easily as Darwin wanted it out, made it out to be. So let's see what we have here. Mr. Holt says, are we going to touch on molecular biology and how convenient the element carbon is for building complex, stable protein chains? I didn't want to get that crazy about it, but yes, that would be the other one. Or how about the fact that water is the only substance that can exist in the same three states of nature at the same time, at the same temperature. At 0 degrees Celsius, 33 degrees Fahrenheit, it can be a gas, a solid, and a liquid. And the fact that if water was not the only substance known to man to expand when it freezes instead of contract, there'd be no life on Earth. We could get into all sorts of physics things. I just grabbed a few of the ones that, when you understand them and you wrap your head around them, powerfully point to a creator. The other thing is, we have never witnessed the evolution of a jackalope. In all of recorded history, we have not witnessed the evolution of a single new species. We have discovered them. And for all we know, they're being created, just poofed into existence. But we've never seen the evolution of new species. So, staying on target, let's go back to biology. This is the human eye. Now, if you take away one of these things, it might still work for a little while, but it won't necessarily work forever. Because, if I take away the outer membrane, it might eventually damage the eye and the eye will atrophy and die or whatever. But for the most part, all of these pieces of this diagram are necessary for you to see. And I have seen people tell me, I've seen skeptics argue, well, more primitive type of eyes like in a mollusk don't need all of that. That's kicking the can down the road. No, it doesn't need all of that, but it's still a very complex eye. But nobody's ever addressed something. If I remove one item from it, the function doesn't work. Charlie, if I have a perfect eye just like this, and there's nothing wrong with it physically, does that eye function?
Yeah, if it's like this, yeah, if it's got all its pieces, parts.
No, it doesn't. You forgot to add that.
Oh, well, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't think about that part.
So
Yeah,
how can an
you're right.
eye develop without a brain?
Yeah, that's true. I didn't go that far.
All right. So now if I have my eyes in my brain, does the eye function?
Now I gotta think. Oh boy. Well, that's an interesting question, because how does our brain work? We don't know. And is our brain really where all this goes?
You're a computer guy.
Yeah.
I have a CPU. That's my
Yep.
brain. I have an
Yep.
operating system. That's going to be my eyeball.
Right.
I need an operator. Consciousness.
Yeah.
Because if I have a computer, perfectly functioning computer, and I have a perfectly functioning operating system, that's an eyeball and a brain. I guess they work. They're just going to work, right? The computer's sitting on your desk, right? It needs to be told what to do, and it needs to be used properly. It needs to be told what to do and how to. I mean, it's got to be given its instructions.
Yep, it's got to be turned on and it's got to do its thing. And you might
everybody, including Mr. Behe, everybody I've ever read, including Mr. Behe, misses this. The definition is irreducibly complex means it must serve its function, or as the Bible would say, it must be good. By itself, it does not serve its function. This is an irreducibly complex system. Not just the computer, not just the operating system, not just the operator. They all have to work in conjunction together before that computer actually does its job, or before the program can do its job, or before the operator can do the job that it's all interconnected and interdependent. And we still haven't addressed the fact that if we're going to just find an evolutionary computer in the woods with an operating system, where the heck did the power supply come from?
Yeah.
And all of this is supposed to have just happened by chance in a world that the laws of physics says decompose complexity, it pushes down the ladder, not up the ladder. See what I'm pointing out?
Yeah.
Now, if I take away the hard problem of consciousness, if I take away your consciousness and I leave you with your eyeballs and your brains, still works, right? Your body still sees and still lives, doesn't it?
Depends on your definition of living.
Exactly.
It might exist, but
is it alive?
Yeah, that's a question.
Yeah. Here's the problem we have with consciousness, and I love this. You can look into your mind until you burst, and you will not discover neurons and synapses and all the rest, and you will not discover them. And you cannot stare at someone's brain from dawn till dusk, and you will not perceive the consciousness that is so apparent to the person whose brain you are rudely eyeballing. This is McGinn, 1999. These are quotes from famous neuroscientists. And then another one, the problem of consciousness, simply put, is that we cannot understand how a brain, gray, granular lump of biological matter, could be the seat of human consciousness, the source or ground of our rich and varied phenomenological lives. How could that lump be conscious? Or conversely, how could I, as a conscious being, be that lump? The point is, we don't know what consciousness is, where it comes from, or what makes it. We just, it's got to be the brain. And now we find out that we don't know where memory is stored in the body. They at one point thought it was the brain, and then they thought it was spinal fluid. Now they're thinking it's in several nodes within the body. They found memory in a group of cells that are in your heart. They don't know where memory is stored. They don't know how decisions are made. They have
it's stored in the cloud, Joe.
Yeah, it's stored in the cloud. Thank you, Kamala.
You know, that thing up there that, you know, just
if you'll read the books I'm showing you, the two easy ones, the two really simple ones, Strobel and Behe's book, the Darwin's Black Box, they're going to talk about some experiments that were done. There was a gentleman, Nobel laureate, neurophysicist. He got people who volunteered. They had their skull cap removed, took their top of their head off, literally, and he put all these electrodes in their brains, and he starts playing with it, and he can make their arms and their legs move, and they'll tell him, I didn't do that. If you are just a meat computer, a meat machine, you wouldn't know whether you made it do that or not. That indicates that your conscious is separate from your brain and your nervous system. What's more, he could never electronically create a memory or alter a decision.
Yeah.
Which would suggest that your consciousness is not part of your physical body. What would you logically deduce that is then? What is your conscious? It's your nephesh. Well, what is a nephesh?
Oh.
Yeah, well, that's next week's class. But the point being here is natural. Nothing points to this. We have no idea what the heck to do with that. None. Science is like, I was reading one of the most recent Nobel laureates. He said, microbiology has taken you as far as it can go. We are at the limits of science. We've got to hand this back to the philosophers and the theologians. In other words, you're back to God. Yeah, Genevieve Thomas's memory is throughout the whole body through the nervous system, more than likely, or possibly it actually resides with, something else with the nephesh. And I'm not going to say soul. We'll talk about that next week, the nephesh, or a week after. But nephesh and spirit are two different things. The nephesh is a soul, but the nephesh and the spirit are two different things. Animals have a nephesh. Some of them, not all of them. All right, let's continue with this. We've got another book I want to have a little fun with. This is Reason in the Balance. It's another one of my books. It argues that the idea of naturalism, which is dominant in modern intellectual life, while theism is often considered irrational, and discusses how these ideas affect current controversies in ethics and public policy. What that book is actually telling you is things like you have no book without an author, so you have no morality without God. We've had that discussion before. And this is also why ethics contradicts morality, because man's man-made morality isn't morality. But this is also a problem of the law without the lawgiver. Can't have that either. So those things, naturalism is basically the only thing that matters is the material world. That doesn't work. We have other logical and philosophical problems that are going to come up if we think that way. Check Mr. Holt's latest comment, see if that's something we need to address, Charlie. So I have some additional reading for you here today. This is a cute little series, and I do mean these are little. Little itty bitty books, man. There's all four of them right there. But they're really good Blow this up so you can see this with me. Make it even thicker. It says, an understanding of reality in which we live all be accomplished through understanding of God, with every disciple of discipline of science is coming full circle back to what the Bible has said all along. This book collection includes these different little books. This first one, Beyond Time and Space. That's the startling discovery of modern science, is that our physical universe is actually finite. Now, in the ancient time, it was always thought that the world was infinite. Well, we know better now. And then Beyond Coincidence, that's the slightest change in any of the many variables prevents life. That's true. And he goes over some of that. These books are written for high school and junior high school kids. They're easy to understand, folks. Beyond Perception, the implication of quantum mechanics is frightening to secular scientists because it points to a conscious, active personal creator. And then finally, Beyond Newton, the interaction of the heavenly bodies cannot be explained by gravity, not gravity as we understand it. So that one's interesting. And then this book is relatively new. It just came out a few years ago. It's by Stephen C. Meyer. And it says, Meyer argues that theism, with an affirmation of its transcendent, intellectual, and active creator, best explains the evidence we have concerning biological and cosmological origins. Previously, Meyer refrained from attempting to answer questions about who might have designed life. Now he provides an evidence-based answer to perhaps the ultimate mystery of the universe. In so doing, he reveals a stunning conclusion. The data support not just the existence of an intelligent designer of some kind, but the existence of a personal God. Everything, and I went through all of these books years ago when I was younger and I was having my little existential crisis, and I went through every one of them. Prove to myself there is a creator. And this is after my philosophy degree, so I brought logic to it. And I questioned these people at that point in my life. I questioned what was in these books because I used to think Hawking he had the answers. And the more I read, the more I realized the atheist position is untenable. You cannot defend it, not in light of what actually exists in the world, what we know or think we know as a species. You cannot logically, cosmologically, biochemistry, biologically, physics, just pure basic logic, reason, mathematically, they all point to the unmoved mover. Now, that leaves you with one of two choices. You're going to either accept that this universe is the product of an intelligent design. An intelligent design implies a creator with a purpose. So you've got a creator who's involved in this universe, who's still involved in what he's doing. Or you're going to reject that and go with the belief that nothing created something out of nothing. Nothing created something out of nothing. And that nothing governs this universe. And that when you die, you go into nothing. Oh, wait a minute. This universe says that you never lose information. So if you die, where's the information go? Oh, well, that one is a violation of the natural laws, Joe, laws of physics. We can violate that one. Well, how many others? Well, I got nothing from nothing. That's a violation of the laws of this universe. I mean, if you want to be an atheist and you're going to tell me that I'm the one that's irrational because I believe that everything points toward a creator, well, you're right. There's one of us in the room that's irrational, but it's not the one you think it is. Now, I'm not going to tell you which God you have to believe in, because most atheists that I know actually are very, very religious people. They worship a God. They just don't realize that they are the God they're worshiping. They have no spiritual eyes. They've rejected it. There's more we could have covered today. And some of the things that were in the audience, your classmates were commenting. We could go on. It could get much deeper. Each of these books has chapters on more things we could go into. I just didn't choose to do that. I just want whoever bothers to listen to understand that if you're a person of faith, your faith is not based on nothing. And if anybody ever tells you I can't prove the existence of God, Your comeback should be, yes, you're correct. I cannot deductively prove him, but I can inductively make a very, very strong case. If the person understands what you just said, you might have an intellectually honest individual on your hands. Might. But if the person says, what? No, that doesn't make any sense, blah, 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 then you got somebody on your hands that doesn't have enough understanding of logic to even continue the discussion with. You got to go teach them the difference between inductive and deductive reasoning. Physical proof and circumstantial proof. Physical is deductive. Circumstantial is inductive. They're both parts of logic. They both work. You use both of them. You use inductive reasoning in your life more than you'll ever realize until somebody teaches you what it is and how it works. It's circumstantial. You cannot nail it down. The fact that you exist, that can be deductively proven by saying, I think, therefore I am. Now, what's the nature of your existence? Now you are very much in inductive reasoning. Okay, you all you can do is deduce what you think you know about the nature of your existence. You can't get outside of you and this universe to look at it. So you don't know. You can't know. It's not possible by definition. And yet people think they understand themselves and their existence very well. They think it's deductive. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. By definition. You can deductively prove your perception of your existence, but you cannot deductively prove whether or not that's the truth of your existence. I know philosophy can bend brains. I get it. I understand. But, for those who are, Joe, none of this had anything to do with the Bible. Do you understand what theology means? Ology, study of. Theo, God. Theology, study of God. And then philosophy, philo, Philadelphia, brotherly love. That's what it means in Greek. Philo, brotherly love. Osophy, study of, love of study. That's what it means. The love of learning. Mr. Hawking wanted to get rid of that because he found himself a new god. He calls it science. Science is a subset of philosophy. Logic is a subset of philosophy. They go hand in hand. So does your religion. We were talking about this before the show. Charlie, you might want to pop in here. I don't know. It's up to you. I read this very differently than the average person. And I see it very differently. And I've come to understand that, I haven't met anybody who reads and studies the Bible the way I do and stands it the way I do. Charlie, have you ever encountered anybody else that?
No, I know you. Not.
Okay. Now, does that make me a heretic? I don't know. Sometimes I think I am, or an apostate. But
I thought you were at first.
I still worry and wonder. But the reason I see the Bible differently is I brought logic to it. And I found that there's an internal logic to the scriptures that is unassailable. You cannot break it. And this is one thing I do know I'm good at. Logic and I are buddies, man. It's the air I breathe. I know it. People who know logic have told me. The tests have proven it. By every measurable standard, I was born to excel with logical and reasoning, critical thinking, and everything. And I've tested this scripture 7 ways to Sunday. If you test it on its merit, it'll have to be an indirect test, but if you test it on its merit, it holds up to every test you can throw at it. So if I have a theory of relativity, Charlie, and every test I throw at it, it passes, it's still a theory, right?
Well, it depends on, you get, I guess it'd still be a theory, but as I gather more evidence, the likelihood that it is correct increases.
So the more times I test the scripture and it holds up to the tests on its own merits, at what point do I start thinking that it's as reliable as the theory of relativity?
Well, when you get to n to the 50th, yeah.
And that's why I read the scriptures the way I do, is because, and I've taken time to understand how to read its language. No, I don't read Hebrew, but I understand the culture from which Hebrew came. And language is just a way of communicating the mindset of that culture, of that individual within the culture. So I've learned the culture. So I understand, I recognize the method of communication, the figures of speech. I've understood how the Hebrew mind works better than most people I know. And the Greek. The Greek was easy. That's the philosophers, and I had to study them in school. I put it all together. My Bible tells me a story that most people never even see. And now Charlie, the reason I asked him to come in here, when I first met him, because of his Mormonism, he was the ultimate skeptic.
Mhm.
And he made me prove every point I made using the scriptures. How'd I do, Charlie?
There's been very few times that I came back and said, "Oh, nope, this is not right." I ended up, oh, geez, yep, it's there.
And most of the ones that aren't right are like what you said earlier. Neither of us really know. We just put
they're
it in a
fuzzy.
place for now.
Yeah,
Go right here for now.
fuzzy.
We might have to move it around or throw it out later, but
Yep.
that's where we're going to leave it for the moment. Because we're assembling a puzzle, a picture.
Yep.
But I also know this. I know that I've had people tell me that my understanding and the way I teach the scriptures is the only way they've encountered that they will accept them. Well, I like that. It's not because I found a way to sell the Bible to you. It's because I think I found the way the scriptures are intended to be understood.
That makes sense.
And all I do is something else Charlie told me that he learned about me that I knew this. I still know this. And I don't mean, God, I hate talking this way because I know how I sound, but I seek capital T truth. And Charlie, you can witness for me if you want or not. It's up to you. But I seek capital T truth. And if you show me either logically, factually that I'm wrong, or you show me in the scriptures where I've been reading something wrong, I will toss that out in a heartbeat, man. I don't cling to traditions of men. I will, and it's gone.
Yep. I've seen
I
it.
don't cling.
In fact, I remember having a conversation with you and you were rebutting something that I said to you, and you got halfway through a sentence, you stopped and you said, "Oh, you're right." And you changed right there in mid-sentence. It was funny, but that's the way you work. And we all need to work that way. When we
serve
are
us better.
presented with capital T truth, then we have a decision to make. And the decision you should make is you need to move.
Yes.
And, that's hard for some people to cast out some, because it could be something that you believed for all your life. There's things that I believed all my life and found out, oh crap, that's wrong. Now what do I do? I've got to move. I don't have a choice from the way I think and the way I do. That's what I mean. Sometimes they're hard choices, hard things to do, but if you're true to yourself and true to the truth, you've got to move.
Now that brings you back to the scriptures again.
Yeah.
This book teaches you that. It presents you with the truth, and then it expects you to make a decision. Yep. And when you don't make a decision in line with the truth you now know to be capital T truth, it calls you stiff-necked because you know the truth, and yet you will not turn aside and get back on the right path.
Yep.
You won't move. We in our society call you hypocritical because we're like, well, you know the truth and you say you espouse the truth, but you don't live by the things you say you believe. That makes you a hypocrite. In Greek, the word hypocrite means pretend actor, play actor. You pretend to be the person. I'm sorry. Most leftists are hypocrites. Now, a lot of Republicans are too, but don't get me wrong. But the left says they're for the little man, but they're rich. And they say they're against the greedy, but they are themselves greedy. They don't see themselves. They're blind. You cannot see yourself in the morality mirror if you're spiritually blind. You can't. Bible tells you that. You can't see your sin if you're spiritually blind. Well, if you can't see your sin, you can't see yourself in the morality mirror. Make sense, Charlie?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
And you'll find, generally speaking, those that hold to that, they will help the little guy, but they'll do it with other people's money.
Or other people's labor.
Where somebody that is morally grounded will whip out their wallet or go help somebody or do something for them directly that costs them something.
And the hypocrite wants credit for it.
Oh, yes. Yes.
But the true good
you didn't
Samaritan
build
doesn't.
that.
Yes, exactly. So whether we realize it or not, and I'm a firm believer that this type of discussion should be held in every congregation once every couple of years. Just to remind people, there's more to why we believe this other than just how we feel. Comment on the board from Genevieve Thomas. This is no one but Yahweh could build a machine as complicated as the human body and create a universe as vast as the one we live in. To study anatomy and physiology and work and see things I've seen as a nurse, I have to believe in a creator. I believed before nursing, but my nursing just made that belief stronger. Now, Ms. Thomas, you're a little ahead of the lesson plan. You have to believe in a creator, yes. But which creator?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about that next week. Notice what I did today. I did not mention the Bible's God very much. Once or twice. I don't want to. That was not the focus of today's discussion. Today's discussion is there a creator? Yes. Question 2, which one?
Yeah.
Occam's razor says there's only going to need to be one. As soon as you create 2 or more, you've got a pantheon. There's problems with pantheons. A lot more. There's logical problems with that too. Now what you have is 3 or 4 or 5 things that existed before creation. Now you do need to ask who created them. I mean, what you've done is kick the can. So you've got a single transcendent creator, and he's not a deist. That creator's not a deist. So now what we have to do is which one? Well, we'll discuss this in depth next week, but it gets real easy to whittle it down to this. There are going to be 3 creators that we're going to talk about, or 3 conceptions of the creator: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, because none of the other 3 match. And all 3 claim to follow the same God. But do they?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you there's actually a 4th in the mix coming out of your Bible. But we'll discuss the details of who the 4th one is next week. Have anything else before we wrap up? Natasha, Charlie? Anything on the board?
Let's see.
Mr. Holt, currently new research into AI involves scientists using lab-grown brains to model synthetic synapses for artificial intelligence platforms. They aren't creating, they are perverting. Yes, and they're not even creating, they're building. This is very important for us to understand. When you get into the metaphysics of this, creating means making something new that never existed before out of nothing. Building means you're rearranging that which already existed into something else. And Mr. Holt says, to me, our human endeavor to create the AI singularity is our attempt to play God. Yes, it is. And I don't think that we should be teaching rocks how to think. Amen, brother.
It's more than that, perhaps.
Yeah. This could be demonic.
This could very well be demonic.
And I think it is.
I think it is. Which
leads to the flood.
Yes.
In the Appalachian area right now.
There's a book out there called The Flood of AI. And if you want just a synopsis, A Rude Awakening, Shabbat Night Live, the last 3 weeks has had a guy on talking about this. And now I don't necessarily say I believe in everything that he purports, but I wouldn't throw his ideas out with the garbage either, because there may be something there.
That's not the flood I was going to go to. I'm talking about these floods right now that are wiping away all these little townships. How many of you have heard that the part of the Carolinas is the only place to get the courts to run the AI chips?
I did hear I saw some article about that.
How many of you knew that
there were certain mines or something there?
Yes, there's certain mines. Now, how many of you knew that there were legal fights for the last few years over expanding those mines to keep up with the demand? And the local people didn't want it. And they were standing in the way. And they weren't going to get their permits. Now this area has been flooded. The conspiracy people are saying that HARP was used to create the flood and wipe those people away so that now they can get their permits and grow their mines. The spiritual eyes in me look at it and say, Yahweh might have bought us a little bit more time to pull our head out of our butts by wiping out the production of this stuff, he's just inhibited AI's spread for at least 2 years until they can get that going again. We sometimes look at natural disasters as, we almost always look at them as curses. We never look at them as blessings, but they can be. All of the attacks on the Egyptian gods in the Exodus were blessings to the Hebrews. They were curses to the Egyptians. So it depends on how you look at things and how you use them. So if that is what's going on here, if the flood's there, yes, it's horrible, people. But in a cosmological war, we're going to suffer casualties, Jack. We're in a war. Yeah, you're going to have casualties in a real war.
Collateral damage.
So if he's bought us time and we don't use it properly, then you end up with the curse. So,
and I know, and this is something that probably is, well, I think it's part of what this is, because and this comes from my Mormon upbringing and stuff. They have this, Mormons are actually pretty good at disaster relief. In fact, they're right up there. Salvation Army is another that's very good at this, and some of the Baptist churches around here do a pretty good job too. But one of the things that they found is that their missionary efforts were so much better after these disasters, because they sent these people out to help people, and then that opened doors to them to, for their missionaries, because they're like, oh, these guys helped me during my disaster, I'm going to let them in to talk to me, and yada yada yada. And I'm not saying this to promote Mormonism necessarily, but what I am saying is these types of things, for those that are opening their eyes a little bit, realize that Yahweh's in control here, and it opens them up to say, oh, there's more important things in life than our material surroundings.
This is how the Christian church grew. The early church grew by helping those who nobody else would help. And it won the hearts and minds of the people. Right. And this is why, primarily why I believe, this is personal opinion. You've all read the Bible where it says, until the restrainer has been removed, what's it, 2 Thessalonians 2. Yeah, I think the restrainer is the church. We quit doing our job. So Satan is no longer bound, because we don't bind him through prayer and action and evangelism. And once that happens, he's out the pit. Well, it took the Messiah getting crucified to jam him into the pit. Last time I looked, we ain't got no messiahs running around here right now, so I don't know how humans are going to jam him back in the pit. It's going to take another act of the Messiah, which means keep your eye on the eastern sky. It's liable to rip open at any moment. All right, we're going to wrap this one up for today. Next week, we're going to cover more apologetics, which God and why. And this is going to be an interesting discussion. I'm going to go in places that a lot of believers are going to be a little uncomfortable with. You need to have this under your belt so that it doesn't weaken your faith if you ever get tested. And let me tell you something. If you're a believer and you think you love Yahweh, the Father, and Yeshua, his Son, God and Jesus, you better have today's class and next week's class under your belt very, very, very firmly. Because your faith is going to get tested probably in your lifetime. In the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to understand what it's like to be in a nation where they come after the believers. And I don't know how it's going to manifest, but it's already started. The echoes of 1930s Germany are ringing in my ears and eyes. I see them in the headlines all the time. And I was told just this week, I was ahead of it. I was 10 years ahead of it, 12. Saw it coming. I was asked how. I said, I'm a sociologist. So I was studying the society. I saw the signs. I haven't told you what I see lately. Haven't told you yet, and I might not. Probably won't. The giddy in me, I'll try to get you ready for what's coming. Sociologist, time for him is done. It's past. So that's what we'll cover next week. Part of it. We love you. We thank you for being here. We hope we're helping. We sincerely hope we help. If we are not helping you think better and more clearly, if we're not helping you grow in your faith, to better understand your scriptures and to better be able to defend your faith, apologetics, why you believe what you believe, both scripturally and non-scripturally, then we're not doing our job. Do one of two things. Email us and tell us where we're going wrong and ask us to give an idea how to change. What do we need to serve you better? Or leave, because we're wasting your time. And I mean it. But now if we are helping you think better and more clearly and growing in your faith and your understanding of the scriptures, please share the show with somebody else who can benefit. The show is only going to grow if the audience pushes it. I'm not going to pay for advertising, and I guarantee you they're going to throttle this show. There's nothing special about me or Charlie or Natasha. What's different from this show than most of the ones I know, even the ones purporting to be Christian shows, I'm going to point you to the Father and the Son, not to me, not to my books, not to my projects or my merchandise, or none of that. I'm not going to point you to Joe. I'm going to point you to the Father, his Son, and his written word. And as it happens, his Son is this made flesh, this written word made flesh. So to them be the glory, not to us. Till Friday, Jimmy Zinker, this Friday, 2 days from now, if everything goes well. And until then, y'all stay safe. Take care of yourself. Like I said, we love you. We thank you for being here. Bye-bye.